Merry Christmas! Yes, it's Christmas Day, and here I am bringing you adventures in full-time RVing. I just got back from the potluck dinner, Christmas dinner here at the park, which was very nice. We all got to spend Christmas together. And now I thought I would, before it turns ugly out here because it's looking a little cloudy, try and get a video done for you folks. And I did promise that the next one would be, what questions do you ask when you call a park? Now, some of these are going to be relevant for you, some aren't. Make sure you take that into consideration. You may not worry about whether it's kid-friendly. You may not be traveling with kids. You may not need to worry about whether it's pet-friendly. You may not be traveling with pets. So take them the best you can, but these are what I ask. The first one is, what's your monthly rates? You may want weekly, you may want nightly, but for me it's monthly, so I say, what's your monthly rates? First thing that tells me is if they have a monthly rate, because some places don't, and if they don't, I don't want to stay there. The second thing is it gives me the price. Along with what's your monthly rates, I always ask what that includes. Does that include my electric, or is electric separate? Because some places put you on metered electric if you're there monthly. The second question I ask is, how many people does that rate cover? Is that rated for 2 people, or 4 people, or is it unlimited? I mean, 5 or 6 people. Parks have different ways that they rate. Most parks are rated for 2 people. There are a few really wonderful parks that are rated for 4. That makes me so happy because there's 3 of us. If it is only rated for 2, you need to ask how much extra it's going to cost per person. Depending on how many more people you have in your camper, you need to know how much more that's going to cost you per day, per week, per month, whatever. Generally, it's between $50 and $60 a month for each extra person. Just that's what I found as a general rule. I found some as high as $75. I found some as low as $30, but it generally runs in that $50 to $60 range. The third question, pretty obvious, but not all of them tell you right off. Do you have room for us? Hey, I've got a 36-foot camper with a slide. Do you have room to accommodate me? You definitely want to tell them how big your camper is, and if you do or don't have a slide. Because some places have really small lots, and they may not be able to accommodate that slide. The fourth question I ask is, are you kid-friendly? Now, granted, my child is almost 20 years old, so kid-friendly isn't a huge deal, but I prefer to be in a kid-friendly place, because if they're kid-friendly, generally they're more patient, they're more tolerant, and generally they have things like a pool and a playground, things like that. Question number 5. Big one for me. Are you pet friendly? Most places don't have a problem with dogs. Most campgrounds aren't going to let you bring bigger breeds in. Some will. Most will not allow you to have pit bulls or Rottweilers. A few will. We have managed to find a few when we still had our Rottie with us that did allow us to. But for the most part, if you're going to be traveling, most campgrounds want to stick with the smaller breeds. Question number 6, and this one's kind of important, and I didn't think it was until we ran into one campground that didn't have these things. Do you have a laundry and a bathhouse? Generally, I didn't ask, because I thought these were a given, but apparently they are not. I found a wonderful campground that I actually wanted to stay in. I would have stayed in, but they had no laundry facilities and no bathhouse. So I had to drive into town to do laundry, and no bathhouse means that I had to deal with my cold shower or boil water, because my hot water heater is currently not working. That was a big part of us leaving. I could have dealt with almost everything else except for that I need to have a bathhouse and a laundry facility. So for me, that was very, very important. And now I ask. 7, another big one for me. Do you have Wi-Fi? And even if they tell you that they have Wi-Fi, it doesn't mean it's good Wi-Fi. It doesn't mean your internet connection is going to be any good. So if it's really important to you to have a good Wi-Fi connection, be sure that you also ask, can I bring in my own if I find yours is insufficient? If you're going to be there for a long period of time, 4 to 6 months, some campgrounds will allow you to bring in your own Wi-Fi. to bring in your own phone line, things like that. And that's the ones I look for when I'm going to do long-term stays. If I'm going to do 6 or 8 months, I'd like to be able to bring in my own Wi-Fi. I prefer it. Even 4 months I would prefer it, but not very many campgrounds allow it, so I kind of do the best I can with that. Just remember that campground Wi-Fi is not necessarily reliable, and it may not go through the whole park. If you really need it, if you work online or whatever, make sure you tell them, I work online, I need to have a reliable Wi-Fi signal, can you put me in a loft that's closest to the hub? And that will help too. Number 8, can I receive mail there? Places that are very full-timer friendly, or even snowbird friendly, are going to allow you to receive your mail right there. Most places that I found have mailboxes, or some form of being able to get your mail through the office or whatever. There's only been 1 or 2 that I've stayed at that do not allow you to get mail at the campground. And in that case, you have to go to the post office, you got to get a post office box. It's a big pain. Well, for me it is. I prefer to be able to get mail where I live. I barely want to check my mail as it is. I sure don't want to have to drive to the post office. So I always ask, can I get mail there? That's going to be very important for me. And the very first campground we stayed at, I didn't know that was an important question, and we couldn't get mail there. So for 6 or 8 months, I wasn't getting any mail because I couldn't. Number 9, do you sell propane at the park? Honestly, this one, I still don't know. Because we only asked the real basic questions to get into this one, because I was trying to find a good priced one that was friendly enough for us to feel comfortable in, because we were stuck. But I honestly don't know if this one sells propane or not. The good news is, prior to us leaving our last location, we had just filled one of the tanks. One of those tanks of propane will last us 3 to 6 months, depending on how much we're using it. So we're covered for right now, and I'm not worried. And the next place we're going to, they do sell propane at the park. And number 10, and this for me is a big one, because you never know if your car is going to have a problem. I don't really like to drive a long way out of the campground. For me, I want to be able to kind of be centralized at my campground where I can get to the things I need to get to and not have to go too far. So are there stores nearby? And that was one of the questions I asked here, because right now our car is broken down, or our truck is broken down. So I asked, are there stores nearby? And there's a Winn-Dixie about a quarter of a mile up the road. Not to mention there's a nice little convenience store right outside the campground. So that makes things so easy for us. And that is one of the things I generally ask at campgrounds. The one we were headed to is within walking distance to like everything, but it still feels like it's off the beaten path. I like campgrounds that feel country, but are still close to everything. And that's a big deal for me too. So that's one of my favorite things, and I definitely ask for that. So that's my top 10 questions. Generally, you can find a lot of this out if they have a website. I love campgrounds that have websites. It's the first thing I will look for. Does the campground have a website? Because I prefer not to have to bother the person on the other end of the phone with all these questions, really. But I do if I have to. So I prefer to look it all up on the website, and maybe I can find the rates. Maybe I can see what's included. Maybe I can find out if they're child-friendly or pet-friendly, or what amenities they have. Do they have a laundry facility? Do they have propane? Do they have Wi-Fi? You know, all this information should be on the website if they have one. Unfortunately, not all campgrounds have websites. And therefore, sometimes I have to call and ask these questions, or at least ask a few of them. But those are the top 10, and I hope that helps you, and I hope you'll come join me for some full-time RVing, or if not full-time, snowbird. Take a vacation, get yourself a camper, and get out there on the road. There's nothing like it. Nothing in the world like the community of RVers that are out here. And I hope this helps you maybe come on out and join us for a little while. Thanks for joining me on Adventures in Full-Time RVing.